What's happening, people? Welcome back to the Scarfey Spurs Talk podcast. In this episode, got ahead of myself there, we'll be reviewing that Chelsea defeat and also looking ahead to Copenhagen in the Champions League. Might be a little bit of a therapy session, something that we were used to last season. But let's introduce tonight's panel. You know me, I'm Harry Scarfe, I'm your host as always. Philp joins us from Frankfurt, Germany. Philp, how you doing?
Good, bearing in mind it's a Monday and obviously coming off the result of the weekend. But it's nothing new, that is it, really, being a Spurs fan. And then we build ourselves up and knock down again, build ourselves up again. I've been on a roller coaster, in it, so we're kind of used to it. But apart from that, all good. Looking forward to some good chat tonight to dissect all of that. But yeah, it's a pleasure to be on. Thank you so much for having me on.
No worries. But yeah, it should be good, as you said, but apologies about the circumstances. Thank you, Philp, for coming on. Luke, welcome back. It's been a little while. How are you doing?
Yeah, it has been far too long. I appreciate you having me back on. Echo Philip's words there. I'm pretty sure you guaranteed me a win whenever I come on, so I'm a bit disappointed on that guarantee. That obviously didn't come to fruition. But yeah, we're here to talk about it, the good, the bad, and unfortunately the ugly as well. So thanks again for having me on.
No worries, anytime. Yeah, I should do that, should I? I mean, I know what Spurs are like. As a dangerous path to go down, let's just say. But be interesting to see. We should look at, spend some time, I should anyway, looking at the guests who comes on, who's got an unbeaten run, if anyone, or who comes on, we've lost the most games. That's something to look at there. Got an idea there. Maybe think. Thank you, Luke, for coming on. And Joseph, thank you very much as well. How are you doing, mate?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Yeah, it's great to be back on. It's been a while. Again, unfortunately, bad circumstances to come back, but it is what it is. You know, it's the life of a Tottenham fan. So yeah, looking forward to getting into it and kind of just getting through what an awful game that was on Saturday. It'll be interesting to break it down, definitely.
Certainly will be. We've got a lot to get our teeth into, so I don't want to waste too much time, because if you are new and listening via podcast platforms such as audio, please do drop us a follow and a 5-star review. If you're listening via YouTube, please do smash that subscribe button. Thank you for all the support recently. Very proud and very happy to say that in October of this year, with the 9th most watched Tottenham fan channel on YouTube, and also if you go look a little bit broader to football in general, football fan channels on YouTube in October, 67th. So that's a little bit of an increase as well. So thank you very much for the support. A very good month that we've just gone past. But before we get into it, shout out to our 5 non-paid partnerships that we have. So the 5 partners are the Kitman, Everything Spurs Discord. We've also got Dan Gay Support Services, In the 290, and Tottenham Programme Collector. Let's talk Chelsea then firstly, review the game. So Spurs starting 11 for people who didn't see it. Went with Vicario, Porro, Danso, Van der Ven, Spence, Paulinia, Bentancur, Sarr, Bergvall, Kudus, Moani, and the Spurs substitutes were Kinski, Romero, Udogie, Simmons, Johnson, Odobert, Richarlison, Tell, and Scarlett. And to whiz through the Chelsea lineup as well, of course, being our opposition: Sanchez, Gusto, Fofana, Chalobah, Cucurella, Casado, James Fernandez, Garnacho, Neto, Pedro. Chelsea substitutes then: Jorgensen, Hato, Ajapong, Tosin, Lavia, Esteval, Gittins, Santos, and Gui. Philp, can I start with you? On the Tottenham team, what are your thoughts? Are any surprises in there for you? Because I certainly didn't expect that in particular 11.
Yeah, there was a couple of surprises. I mean, I actually thought that he would start with Udogie in the game, because I understood that he was pretty much fit to play. I also actually thought he would play a kind of 3 at the back or 5 at the back. Regardless of the lineup that he picked, I thought he would actually try it this match. And then when I saw the lineup, kind of looking at or trying to put the pegs, into holes, I kind of thought, well, based on that team selection, it is going to be like 3 at the back. And then I was a bit surprised when we started the game that it wasn't. So yeah, a few surprises. I also thought that he might actually play or try and play Richarlison on the left, as an example. I was happy to see Bergvall start the game, because I think that he deserved that as well. I would have actually liked to have seen Porro. This sounds, again, some people would say, well, he's probably our best right back, but I would have actually liked to have maybe seen Spence actually start on the right instead of Porro for this game, assuming that Udogie would play. If only because I just think that Porro is just, I think he's completely overplayed. And I think he's kind of out of form anyway, but then we've got so many players that are out of form. Muani obviously starting, I was happy with. And then I guess the other kind of players in there was fine. Romero, yeah, I would have liked to have seen Romero start obviously as well, but I guess he thought he wasn't fit enough to actually start the game. And maybe he thought he could bring him on later on. But I think the fact that Romero is pretty much our most creative player means that when he doesn't start or when he doesn't play, it's a massive issue anyway. So I was a bit surprised, but as I said, I was almost a bit more surprised that he didn't actually kind of play Udogie and actually maybe set up in a back three or a back five, however you want to call it, to be honest.
Okay, thank you, Philip. Luke, can I ask you on that point of the lineup? But Philip mentioned it there in terms of what formation it would be. When you saw the team that was announced, do you think, what formation is this? How are you kind of viewing that at the time? Because if you go on different football apps, they all said slightly different formation.
Yeah, it did seem really weird, the lineup, because specifically we didn't have a left winger at all. Obviously, you had Bergvall or Sarr that were kind of the only ones that you would say would potentially play in that space. But Kudus can play infield, so it seemed like a really narrow formation, which then leads you to believe that you're probably going with five at the back. Polina probably fills in at centre back. So. I'm not sure. I'm not sure about it. It's just the lineup just felt a little bit strange for me. Specifically, if you're playing five at the back, I'm okay with that if Udogie's there. But if Spence is there, then you're naturally bringing him infield, and therefore you're not getting the width, which is what you want from a five at the back system. It's a little bit like everything we've been doing on that left hand side comes central, which means that we don't have any width, which is a bit of a problem. So, yeah, the whole lineup situation was a little bit of a strange one. I feel like that Spence is such a good one-on-one defender, and he brings so many positives to the team. However, it's like a jigsaw, right? And when he's in it, there's so many other things that you have to change around in this team to get the best out of him. It's almost like a bit of a sacrifice. So I found it a bit strange. I think with Bergvall, I don't think he should be playing out on that left-hand side. I think that's not a decision I think he'll do again. I know he came off very early on, but it's not a position for him. Everything should be down that centre. So it was a bit of a strange lineup for me. But yeah, I'm hoping that we don't see that sort of lineup again, to be honest with you. I think we need to have some wide players. We've got about 57 left wingers. You could argue none of them are good enough, but we've got so many that some of them should be playing, I think.
It's very true. As you said, whether we've got the quality or not, I mean, depends, but certainly got the depth. Thank you, Luke, for that. Joseph, sticking with the lineup before we do progress, Romero, were you surprised to see him not start? We heard that he was declared fit. Did you expect him to just come back into that side?
I guess yes and no. I mean, it's a tough one. I guess none of us really know the exact the exact level of fitness they declared him at. I would say if you're fit enough to be on the bench, you are probably fit enough to start the game, because I don't really understand, the idea of, you're fit enough to be on the bench, but you can only play a certain amount, or at least if he was, maybe he could start the game. And then if it's really that much of an issue, you bring him off later in the game. But yeah, I mean, the lineup in general, I kind of echo what the boys have said. When I first looked at it, it looked more of a five at the back kind of thing. I'm very confused to see that amount of kind of central midfielders starting in the team. It just seemed so unlike anything we've done so far. When I first saw the formation, I'm thinking, maybe a five back, a bit like how we played against PSG in that Super Cup kind of game. But again, it just was nothing like that. So it was a bit confusing. I can't say I was against it. I like seeing this kind of change in tactics, especially when, we've had a couple of games recently that haven't always gone to plan. So it was nice to see that change. Obviously, it didn't seem like it worked, but obviously, these things can happen. So yeah, interesting lineup. Probably not what I would have gone with. And to Luke's point about, the left wing situation, I completely agree. I don't understand the idea of starting Bergvall on that left. It would have been nice to see, obviously, how that kind of could have gone, but we didn't get to with Bergwall going off. But it does kind of show a clear lack of trust in a sense from Frank with that left wing position, because there is no one that's made that position theirs. You know, we've seen Odebear play in it. We've seen Tell in moments, obviously mainly playing up front, but sometimes he's kind of been pushed out to left wing. It doesn't seem like he has any faith in anyone playing there. Johnson, just no one, you know. And it's a clear position needing to be addressed in the winter window. So not my favourite formation that we've seen, and not my favourite lineup. But again, I'm always willing to see how it goes. Unfortunately, it did not go well, as I'm sure we're going to get onto.
Exactly. We will get onto that for sure. Thank you, Joseph. And you've led me on actually nicely to my next point, because unfortunately in the 7th minute, Spurs are forced into the first substitution way earlier than I'm sure would have been even imagined. But on come Xavi Simons for Lucas Bergwall, who had to come off. Philip, I'll come back to you. Do you think it was, although it was frustrating, I'm sure in particular for Bergwall as well as Spurs in general, do you think it was the right decision by the medical team?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I mean, they've got protocols there for a reason. And they did tests on him, I believe, standard concussion tests, and he didn't pass it. So it's simple. You don't play then, right? Regardless of how you feel. There's been cases in the past, right, with concussion or head injuries where players have come back on and, they've gone downhill. And, you can't take that risk. He would have liked to have played on. Obviously, he didn't feel that it was as bad as it was. But, I mean, he's obviously not even in training, is he? He's got to take a week off. I believe the rule is, right? So he's obviously out for tomorrow, but he should be back at the weekend. But it was the right decision to take him off. And, that's where we have to trust in the rules and regulations, and also in the staff that's there. And it's not even just particularly our medical staff, really. It would be any other staff that's there as well, right? That's standard in any sport nowadays. It's the right decision. Nothing more to say on it. As to Bergwall actually coming off for Xavi, I mean, there'll be a lot of fans that will say, well, it was better. Maybe it was better for our balance that Xavi then came on, if that makes any sense, But I think my very simple point on it is I think that kind of knocked us, a bit sideways in the game. I think at the end of the day, regardless of whether we agree that Bergwall was the right pick, kind of playing off the left, and I don't agree with that either, by the way, but at the end of the day, we set up like that. And Frank would have had some kind of idea or plan around that. Maybe they would have switched, as the game goes on. I think it knocked us out. And I wasn't obviously in the stadium, but it came across on the TV that the atmosphere kind of changed a bit after that as well, right? It seemed like it took the wind out of our sails a bit, the break and everything, and then having to make that sub kind of so early. So, yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate when these things happen. And I mean, we wouldn't have obviously planned for that to happen, right? And I don't think it was a positive for us, or at least it didn't help us, progress the game as we probably would have liked to have progressed the game, put it that way.
Okay, thank you very much, Philip, for that. Certainly, I think it was a big point in the game. Luke, just how significant was this moment? Of course, we never really know, what would happen if Bergwall had stayed on in terms of the impact of the game or the scoreline, etc. But do you think, looking back, this did change the game plan? Frank, when asked about it, said, didn't really say it had. He said, Simmons knew the game plan. Of course, he wanted Bergwall to continue. So he kind of played it down. What about for you?
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that you never plan for, do you? You're not after seven minutes or so. I mean, the decision is absolutely, completely agree with Philip. There's no doubt about it. These are one of the rules that have come in where you can't argue. It's like the offside rule. It's factual. If they can't pass the test, they shouldn't be on. I'll never forget when Jan Vertonghen stayed on the pitch, and he absolutely should never have been on that pitch. You could tell he had no idea what was going on. So it's unfortunate. I think he actually misses 2 games. I think it's a full week that they have to miss, and because it was a 5 o'clock game, he misses the 12:30 Saturday kickoff as well, I believe. But they're brought in to protect players. So is it frustrating? Yes, it is. Should it be brought in? Absolutely, because this will prevent things from happening further. So completely agree with it. But this is part of what what Frank was when he came into the club. This is what we expected from Frank, is that we would be able to be adaptable, right? This is what his whole mantra is. He's adaptable, he's flexible, his players can play in numerous positions. You're not, what you see on the team sheet is not actually what you may see during the game in the different phases. So yes, it did affect us. Should it have? Probably not. And I think, again, I'll agree with Philip that when Xavi come on, it probably, in our eyes, in terms of on the team sheet, it should have gave us a bit of balance. Bergval's character and the type of player profile that he is, you definitely want that sort of character in a derby. Youthful, energetic, will try anything. You know that he's going to work his socks off. And he will try things as well. He'll run at defenders. He'll commit players. So he's definitely a good profile for a derby. Whether Xavi Simons is that profile that you want right now in terms of a bit of strength, a bit of aggression, I'm not sure whether he's got that just as of now. But hopefully he was the one to sprinkle a bit of stardust, and unfortunately he wasn't able to do it. But yeah, as I say, I definitely think it took the wind out of our sails a little bit, and I think Bergval's a little bit of a fan favourite as well. So when you see someone come off the pitch, and with all due respect, Xavi's not been in the best of form, maybe it deflated the crowd a little bit. But that's the catch-22, right? The fans need to get the players up, but the players need to do something to get the fans up. It's like who's right, who's wrong. You can't really tell, really. So, but yeah, I definitely think it affected us probably more than it should have.
Thank you, Luke. I personally agree with you. Thank you very much. 31st minute, Chelsea had quite a big chance, where Porro gave it away. It was a save, 1v1 save, actually, by Vicario to deny Pedro. Then, just 3 minutes later, in the 34th minute, the deadlock was broken by Chelsea to get the first goal through, you guessed it, Pedro. Philip, I'll come to you. I mean, it's fantastic. Firstly, before we get into Spurs and maybe not learning our lesson, fantastic from Moises Caicedo, wasn't it?
Yeah, unbelievable. And I mean, when you see someone like Caicedo kind of, play the way he did at the weekend, but also in other games, it just makes you realise again what we're missing and how far off being a genuinely top team we are. Unfortunately, Caicedo is probably the best centre midfielder in the league, I would say, doing the role that he does, arguably. Maybe there's one or two others that could lay claim to that, but Caicedo's top class. When he's paired with someone else next to him, like Enzo, and then the other players around that, it's difficult to play against teams like that anyway, right? Where you're dominated like pretty much in the middle of the park, anyways. But Caicedo was excellent in that moment, and he just, to be honest, for the whole of the game, right, when the minutes that he played, he just showed his class. And we've talked about it over the last few months, back in the summer, even back until probably April, May, that if we could kind of get an Adam Wharton in. That kind of player who I think is similar to Caicedo, really, in some respects. That more deeper lying, powerful, creative, all-round midfielder, right, a la Declan Rice kind of profile, unfortunately, then it would be a game changer for us. And I think he just showed us, again, as I said, what we're missing. And, we've been raving on about, obviously, what Palhin has given to us in the team. And, he has, rightly so. We've missed someone like Palhinha, right, in terms of his kind of enforcing. But, if you look at the other options that we have in midfield, and that includes players like Bergval and Sarr, right, who admittedly are also very young, they're also quite lightweight, really, they're not established players. We don't have that many other options there. And let's be honest, Bentancur is, I don't think Bentancur, by the way, deserves the overall hate that he's kind of got. This season so far, he's had patches and he's had some games where he's been really good. Even against Everton, like away from home, he's been pretty good. But he's not the solution for the future. So I don't want to ramble on about that too much. But again, Caicedo just showed us like what you need quality in there, right? That's it, right? Like if we we might finish 6th, 5th, 7th, 8th, 12th. Who knows, right? Hopefully not 17th. But like regardless of where we do finish, if we want to kind of get to the point where we want to, challenge for Champions League every season, qualify for the Champions League every season, and and genuinely win other trophies, right? Where we end up playing top teams along the way, you know. And again, I don't want to belittle the Europa League, but you know, fact is that, you know, it was a competition with less top quality teams in, right? And luckily we managed to win it, but you know, we may not have won it, right, if we played up against some other top 4 teams in there. So that's what we have to do. So, you know, he just showed us. He showed us. What a player.
He certainly did. Yeah, good, very, very good, very high level he's reached this season. Thank you, Philip. Joseph, I'll come to you. I mean, we got that warning which I referenced there 3 minutes ago, you know, where we gave the ball away in possession, playing out from the back. I mean, we've done it again 3 minutes later through Spence. So where we lost the ball and then instantly Chelsea won it back and then we lose it again. And that's where the goal happened. So you could say we've got 2 warnings in the space of about 180 seconds. So it's frustrating, isn't it, when you get those warnings in football and you don't kind of learn from them and avoid that mistake from playing out from the back.
I mean, the entire game was frustrating, wasn't it? From minute one, really. I mean, from Bergvall going off and kind of it disrupting maybe what kind of game plan that we had in the start of the game. I mean, I think obviously I didn't comment on this, but that was a massive moment, because as much as I understand what people are saying of Simmons coming on and maybe adding a different edge to the game, a different kind of quality that maybe wasn't on the pitch in that Tottenham side. Also, what Bergvall brings is completely different to what Simmons can do. And, you know, like Luke said, having kind of a young, hungry, energetic player, if you have that and Pape Sarr in midfield kind of running around and trying to kind of get into those, you know, he would have been batting a little bit with Enzo and Caicedo in moments. And Xavi Simmons, we know, is not going to really do that as well. So, it was a shame to see him go off. But yeah, I mean, just the entire game was so frustrating. And the one thing that was, you know, that you could see that Chelsea did really well was they kind of just man marked. It was just man for man. They just went 1 for 1, pressed high. And the Tottenham players couldn't deal with it. Unfortunately, I don't think our players are as good as maybe we think they are in terms of their actual ability on the ball. And Chelsea really nullified us. You know, every player, just every time we had the ball from a goal kick, we didn't want to play it long because we knew we'd lose it. And if we played it short, our players weren't good enough to beat the press and to play through it. And we saw it happen a bunch of times. Obviously, Porro, a poor pass, and then, you know, Vicario makes a nice save, which is, it's been good to see Vicario playing a bit better, which has been a positive, I guess. But, you know, in that sense, Jed Spence kind of poor touch from him. He loses the ball. Then Xavi and Van der Ven kind of playing this little, you know, I don't want the ball, you don't want the ball, you know, kind of just lazy football. It was lazy. It was, and Caicedo took advantage of that. And, you know, obviously it is, you know, I guess we do need to think about that. Caicedo, 120 million, Enzo Fernandez, 100 million. You know, they are better footballers than what we've got. You know, their midfield is more than probably what our whole squad almost costs, which is crazy when you think about it. But they are just leaps and bounds above us. You know, Caicedo is an unbelievable midfielder. I've never seen a player dominate like that at Tottenham, I don't think. Since we've moved into that new stadium, I don't know if I've seen a midfielder completely dictate the game like Caicedo did. He just run it. And yeah, we had no answer for that game. We had zero, we had nothing. And I can't believe it. I genuinely could not believe what I was watching on Saturday. The goal kind of summarised that first half an hour. You know, it was just Chelsea having a system that we couldn't really break through. We had no idea. We had no idea what to do with the ball, without the ball. It was just really poor from the off. And yeah, I mean, you've got to say Chelsea deserved it as much as it was a goal that we gave them. You know, off the base of the game, I think it was kind of going that way. Chelsea were going to find the opener eventually. It was just how long it was going to take them. And yeah, you know, that it's a shame that's the way we concede it from an error rather than a moment of, you know, good football from Chelsea. But it's how it goes when you're playing out from the back, but you can't beat a press. This is eventually going to happen. It almost happened, what you said, like 180 seconds beforehand. It ends up happening with Van de Ven losing the ball, and obviously João Pedro with a pretty simple finish.
Indeed, incredibly frustrating, as you said, throughout, not just this moment, throughout the game. Thank you, Joseph. But Luke, on this goal, I mean, for you, do you think it's a case of, you know, Van der Ven was sold short by Simmons, which I didn't notice at the time, but I went back and watched the highlights and I thought, do you know what, that's a really, really poor pass. But also, has Van der Ven got to do a little bit better? But you say that, but he's got got Caicedo charging at him, and, you know, hasn't got much time with the ball. So, I mean, I never like to pick faults, but the reality is this was an avoidable goal, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I'm going to completely agree with the guys on Caicedo. I do some little notes before I come on any podcast just to make sure I can reference back to him, and I've put Caicedo and I've put a big star next to him. It was just unbelievable, and exactly what the guys have said. We're talking about levels at Spurs and what levels we want to get to. This is you look at like Palhinha. Sometimes this season he's been unbelievable in midfield, and you think that's the level we need to get to. Caicedo is just above that. He's just such above that, and that's the level that we need to get to. And we used to look at Sons and Kanes and look around teams, and we used to know where we could really hurt players because we had some top players. And unfortunately, I don't think we've got many of them, or we certainly don't have enough of them. And he just absolutely dominated, and literally what everybody is saying is bang on for me in terms of being technical enough. I don't think we've got technical players that are good enough technically to be able to deal with high press. I don't think we can do that. We always seem to have one or two where and I'm glad you mentioned that, Harry. That pass is the difference between a very top team and not, because that pass is not as basic as it looks. It's a 5 or 6 yard pass. But positionally, where you play that pass, where you put it, is he left-footed? Is he right-footed? I see it with goalkeepers all the time. The amount of times a centre-back passes it to a goalkeeper on a weak side. And I'm like, just pass it to the stronger foot. Why has it got to go to the weaker one? I think with that pass to Van der Ven, he had two options. One of them was just boot it, and it will definitely hit the defender in front of you, the attacker in front of you. And where does it land? That's pot luck, right? And the other part is to try and bring it under control and try and beat him. And it works quite a lot of the time for Van der Ven. He kind of does that thing where he lets the attacker get close and then he just kind of shoots the ball off and runs away from him and no one's getting anywhere near him. But Caicedo was just he was too close. He was just literally too close to be able to do that. So as soon as I see it, I did think Simmons has made a bit of an error there. He should have been further away from the goal, and it should have been enough for Van der Ven to just run onto it and absolutely clip it down a wing, which is what he'd done quite a few times this season. So I do think it was another mistake by Simmons, and it's going to dent his confidence even that more when really we want to try and be building him up, not kind of pulling it down. But unfortunately, that's just one of those things. But this is the technical side of the game where Spurs are lacking. We don't have. I was screaming for it in the summer, saying that we needed more of a ball playing midfielder. I completely agree with Philp about Bentancur and Palhinha. I think both of them have been superb in certain games. But in most games, you don't need both of them. And it's about pairings. And this is where Franks, again, is normally fantastic. He normally gets the pairings bang on. And I don't think this pairing is a pairing that should be working in the Premier League week in, week out. There'll be certain games, 100%, they'll be perfect to play in. Ironically, Chelsea would probably be one of them, but we just couldn't deal with it from a technical aspect. And it seems that all of the plan right now is just give it to Mohamed Kudus, just give it to him and hope that he can do something. And that's all we seem to be doing.
Well, this is the one game he couldn't. He's against Cucurella, one of the better left backs in the Premier League. And let's be honest, Kudus didn't really get much because Cucurella man marked him out the game. And, I mentioned it before, and it's exactly what you're saying, Luke, in terms of the technical players. Like, obviously heard, I know we'll go on to Frank and a lot of comments around him because there's obviously fans that are very disappointed with his performance, as they should be. But I think people do need to realise that our players are not anywhere near as good as we maybe kind of think they are sometimes. Like, in terms of actual ability on the ball, I didn't see really any real impressive bits of football from anybody on the ball. No one could pass the ball very well. They were making bad decisions with who they were passing the ball to each time as well. It was just really poor from a footballing standpoint. And Chelsea had a game plan to just try and press us as soon as we get the ball, and they couldn't deal with it. And these are professional footballers. They should be able to deal with that. There should be, again, partly with tactics, maybe with movement off the ball. There was very little movement from anybody throughout the game when we were trying to build out from the defense. No one was moving ahead of them. And it was just awful from the moment we started. And there was just nothing. There was nothing to see where you were like, yeah, this is where we can go and get a goal. There was nothing.
That's just incredibly disappointing, especially in the derby as well. That's what a lot of people say. But thank you very much, Joseph. 43rd minute, Vicario made another point-blank range save from João Pedro. Then in the 3rd minute of additional time of the first half, Bentancur was booked. Then just 60 seconds later, just under actually, Chalobah was booked for Chelsea. Then in the dying seconds of the first half, so we're talking like literally what would have been the 51st minute, Kudus forces a save. I think the first real time that Robert Sanchez was called into action. But at half-time, Chelsea went into it with a 1-0 lead. Philip, do you think they were deserving of their lead at the break, Chelsea?
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, 100,000%, right? At the end of the day. Before I go into just a tiny bit more detail on that, I just want to come back to Joseph's point also just from before, but also Luke, because I think we all agree about the lack of technical ability, let's say, right, in those key positions. And I think that something worth considering and worth debating is also the let's say the influence and the effect that bringing Palhinha into the team has also had. Because, a lot of fans, and look, he's had some great games for us, by the way, right? As I said, especially away from home, and it doesn't really matter who he's paired with, right? But he's had some games where he's been excellent. But I think a lot of fans and a lot of football still kind of believe in that championship manager element, right? Where in every team, you need to have that CDM kind of player, right? And in the old days, for us, it would have even been someone like Wanyama or Eric Dyer back in the days when he played that role, plus whoever else. And I actually think that part of the challenge that we generally have, and that goes into that lack of technicality, is that in some respects we don't even need or would want Palhinha. And it's not just about pairing Palhinha with Bentancur. It's not just saying Palhinha is the one that should play, right, and Bentancur isn't. I actually think that Palhinha in a lot of games completely, how can I say, impacts our game negatively. I'm not criticizing Palhinha. I'm not saying that he's not performing or he shouldn't be playing. But the challenge is that he gives us zero ball progression. He doesn't give us any of the things that Frank actually wants and needs. And I don't want to, again, go into too much detail on this because I think this is something which can be debated as a completely separate point as well. But just going back to those points, there is an argument, I think, where you can just look at the midfield full stop, right? Regardless of whether it's, it's that pairing, regardless of whether it's, Palhinha and Bergvall, regardless of whether it's Palhinha and someone else, right? But in a lot of cases, Palhinha does not benefit how we want to come forward at all. And I think
I hear you, Philip, but would you, Frank would say and look at that and go, yeah, but he's the reason we get so many clean sheets, having that traditional number 6, you'd be like sitting in front of the defence that Spurs haven't had for quite a long time. Can you see that point of view? I agree with you going forward, but do you see all the things that Palhinha brings defensively?
No, absolutely. And he brings physicality in there as well, right? He's a big guy. He does get around the pitch pretty well as well. He does all the blocks and everything. He's probably stopped us conceding more goals overall.
Although himself as well.
And he has scored. And he has scored as well. I mean, there's obviously a clear reason for him to be in the team tactically, and I'm not jumping on his back. But I think when it comes to how we want to play as a team, in progression, in possession, coming forward, it's not as simple just say, oh, we've signed Palhinha, let's put him in the team because he's class in that CDM role. More ideally, we're suddenly going to kind of, improve in those other areas, or he's going to give the rest of the midfield and maybe the defense more ability to come forward, right? I think sometimes bringing someone like that in can also take 6 to 9 months to find the structure around how to utilize Palhinha in the best way and how the other players know where Palhinha is going to, do you know what I mean? I think
I do think you have a point, Philip.
It's a bit more complicated. It's more complicated is what I'm trying to say, the
one thing I would say to it is obviously Spurs were screaming out for a kind of enforcing midfielder for a while now. Last year it was clear that we didn't have a player like that. It's been clear for a number of years. I mean, some people say since really Moussa Dembele you don't notice someone who's been in that midfield, who's been a real enforcer, who wins the ball. And the one thing I would say, I understand, people would look at Paulinho and go, oh, he's there to just break up the play and can't do much else. I don't think he's as bad as people say on the ball. Like, he can pass it. I know he's not a progressive passer. And I just think the reason people will outline that so much is because we don't have a midfielder next to him who can progress the ball very well. In general, even to the extent of Bentancur definitely isn't that player. I don't think Sarr or Bergvall are that player either. I don't think we have that player at the club. I think the player that probably could do it the best is Maddison. And obviously with his injury, we don't, he's not going to be able to do that. So I think it outlines a clear issue with the team, is that we don't have a progressive passer. And when you look at Paulinho, you go, oh, well, he's great at breaking up the ball, but he can't move the ball forward. Well, Bentancur doesn't move the ball forward really well. And realistically, we need another player next to Bentancur to do that. So it's a gap in our team. And I think Paulinho has brought so much to our team that we didn't have for years, that we just need to find the right player to play next to. And I don't know if we have that at the club at the moment. I think it's something they need to address. But I don't know. I understand what you're saying. I get in terms of just the overall kind of chemistry and the kind of the team doesn't really, the midfield doesn't work, and there's a reason why so many people have been questioning it. I don't know. I don't feel like, I think it is just personnel. I don't think we have a player that is a progressive passer in the team. I don't think we have one.
I agree with you on all of that, and I'm not singling him out, right, at all, but I think that he is adding to the challenges as well, and that's also just in terms of getting the balance. I agree. I think that he's probably our best midfielder, to be honest, at the moment, right? And he's certainly the guy who's got the most international experience. He's obviously 28 as well. He can play it progressively and he can play it forward. But the challenge is that probably, I think if you look at the top 4-5 teams in the league, I'm not sure that that even Paulinho would be starting for those teams.
Neither would Bentancur, and neither would Sarr, and neither would Bergvall.
No, exactly. And that then is just the lack of quality, but also the lack of that, in some ways, modern profile player, who can kind of do a bit of everything. And, that lot down the road, they've gone and bought Zubimendi, just an example, right?
We need to spend big money.
Yeah, exactly. But
I mean, Caicedo and Enzo, 100 million each. Declan Rice, 100 million. Obviously, Zubimendi was on a release clause. But, every team, you're right, has a midfielder who can do a bit of everything. And unfortunately, we're not in that position right now. I mean, Sarr and Bergvall, they're both young. We need to kind of give them time. But yeah, Paulinho and Bentancur, I mean, I'd say Paulinho is a master of one. And I think Bentancur is a master of none. He's okay at everything, but he's not specifically amazing at anything. And we need someone who's amazing at everything, because that's what a modern day Premier League midfielder has to be.
Okay, thank you very much, both of you, for that discussion. It was really interesting. Definitely one to go into detail for another day about Tottenham, quality, what players are getting to other top 6 teams, or maybe if we could word it a different way, like, are there any that get into top 6 teams? But second half, then 47th minute, there was a Spurs booking that went to Kevin Danso. 59th minute, Simmons was booked 2. Then on the hour mark exactly, Spurs made a double substitution along Richarlison and Romero, the type of players you want, I think, in a London derby. And off went Bentancur.
You never want to see Richarlison.
I was just going to say, actually, some people would not want to see Richarlison, but they show the fight, maybe, in a game like this. You beat me to it. Off went Bentancur and Danso. Then 66th minute, Chelsea responded with their own substitution. Garnacho was off and Gittins was on. 68th minute, Chelsea another player got booked in Enzo Fernandez. In the 73rd minute, then Thomas Frank with a big roll of the dice to make a triple substitution, his final roll of the dice as well. We went quite early with it. And on come Johnson, Odogi, and Odobert for Moani, Odobert, and Simmons. So I've got to speak about it here, about in terms of Simmons. And Luke, I'll come to you. Did he struggle to get into this game? And we know we've spoken about him, he struggles already. Did he also struggle in this one?
Yeah, there were glimpses. I think, again, and it goes back to that technical ability. Simmons goes into a technical team and he will do all right, I think. But I don't think the players around him are technically good enough. I think there's a lot of the times where Simmons he's not blessed with pace. He's not got an abundance of pace. So he's not going to beat a player and then run away from him. He is not physically strong enough at this moment in time. Could he learn to use his body better? Possibly. Will he get stronger? I'd hope so. But he's the sort of player that comes in and plays quick 1-2s and plays balls around the corner. And I don't think we've got enough technical players in the team to be able to actually read what he's doing and where he's going with certain bits. So I think that's a problem that we've got. But also, your Simmons is your player that comes into a settled team who are performing well and brings the bit of stardust. And we're struggling so much that it's almost, and we said it earlier, we're literally just giving it to Mohamed Kudus and asking him to do everything for us. And Simmons is not that sort of player. He needs to be in a good structure around him and be able to bounce off and have good partnerships. And I think that's where we're lacking everywhere. It's just exactly what I said about Spence, him coming in field. And it means that the winger's not wide enough. It's like a puzzle. And I think we've got a lot of players where if you look at them stylistically and what they can do, if you put them right with the right partner, with the right player behind them, with the right player in front of them, they can work. Unfortunately, we've got so many players that need particular partners or particular combinations, and we don't have them profiles in the team. So it is a real tough one. I think Simmons will be able to do a pretty good job at Spurs, but we need the right midfield. We need someone who can play the ball, progress it. That's why I think they went for Morgan Gibbs-White. I think Morgan Gibbs-White was viewed as a player that would be playing as an attacking central midfielder, so next to a Palhinha type, for instance. Yeah. And therefore, he's the one that progresses it. Now, Morgan Gibbs-White linking up with Simmons, linking up with Kudus, that I can kind of see. I can see where we're going there. But it's almost like we've got bits of a squad and then bits more. And I've been saying this ever since last year, since I came onto YouTube, that we need to stop flipping and flopping between ideas and formations and tactics. And we need to have a philosophy at this club where we say, right, this is how we want it to play. Because formations, you can change them around, but the intent is still there, right? We could play 7 attackers and play defensively, or you could play 8 defenders but still play in an attacking way. And we always flop between ideas. So we went from ultra defensive, then we went to ultra attacking under Ange, and we forget about defense, and now we're kind of going back. And this is why we've got so many players that don't really fit a profile. So we've got 3 wing backs basically at the moment in time when we play 4 at the back. So why is that the case? So I think that we need to really start working on the intricacies, and that's when you start sliding and opening teams up, as opposed to just relying on like the set pieces, the breaks in play, the deflections, and that sort of thing. And I think Simmons will be the player that can bring that. But again, he has to come into a settled, good side. He's not going to want to go to. He's not going to settle into a side that are struggling and can't keep the ball and not confident, that sort of thing.
Thank you very much, Luke, for that. You're absolutely right. Hopefully Simmons can, over time, put in those performances and really start to make an impact. But very similar, I'd argue, to the situation of Florian Wirtz at Liverpool. But to progress in the talking points then, 74th minute, Kudus was booked. In the 76th minute, Chelsea made a sub with Lavia coming on for Gusto. Then the 85th minute, they brought in Esteval for Neto. And then the 89th minute, Tosin Adebayo for Wesley Fofana. I mean, Joseph, Chelsea saw the game out very well, didn't they? I mean, they've run the clock down like those 3 substitutions, deliberately staged, equally apart. Do you think... Well, I looked at Chelsea and it just reminded me of like a Mourinho team almost, or even someone like Sean Dyche. Very good at seeing the game out, that kind of tactical element to it. So, I mean, they've done a good job. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, we could have played that game for another 90 minutes. We weren't scoring a goal. We didn't create a thing. And, I think what summarised the game was that free kick, and I think the 92nd minute when everyone went forward, all the Tottenham players went forward. Vicario played it short to Spence, who was then kind of man-marked. So was Kudus out wide. All the Chelsea players moved up. It was passed back to Vicario, he played it long, and it went straight to Robert Sanchez. It was just dreadful. And, I mean, one thing maybe that would help Chelsea, I mean, they played midweek against Wolves. Obviously, we played midweek. They made 10 changes in that game. And obviously coming into this game, a whole different 11, basically, that were rested, again, of quality footballers who, again, technically are better than ours. But they executed a game plan. It's not like they created thousands of chances. They just had to nullify us. And, they score 1 goal off of our mistake, and they didn't really need to do anything else. They had a couple of chances towards the end of the game where we were really throwing everyone forward. Romero basically was playing as a striker towards the end of the game, and Chelsea could have finished the game, by with 2 or 3. But overall, it's not like they created thousands of chances throughout the game. It's just they had a game plan, go man to man with Tottenham, and we didn't create a thing. So yeah, as much as Chelsea played well, and I think you have to give them credit with how they set up and the professionalism they showed in a derby. They knew what they needed to do and they executed it well. I think it's a bit worrying to see how little ideas our players had. The kind of obviously the sulking from players was disappointing. Just to kind of like I know there was boos and everything. I know we'll get onto all of that, but it was disappointing to see. It looked like they gave up after a while. They knew they weren't going to get anything from the game, and it was just a horrible atmosphere game to be a fan of and to watch, because there was no positives to take from it. And it is what it is. We got to move forward and find a solution to this issue, but the lack of creativity is a real issue. And I know, I'm sure you've got some of the quotes from Thomas Frank, but when he said it's the least a team has ever created for him, that's basically him saying the attackers aren't good enough, because he can create chances. He made Visser and Mbeumo into 20 goal a season players. They weren't that, they aren't unbelievable footballers. They became that with Frank. I don't see anyone doing that in our team. And it's very worrying to see how little we're creating as a football team. Like, just no kind of patterns of play going forward, no attacking, just nothing. I really don't know. And it's kind of left me stumped. Going with Frank, I've always kind of gone, we need to be patient, and we need to see how he kind of gets this team going. And I'm still in that same kind of headspace, but this game was really worrying to see just how much we just had nothing. So definitely things have got to get addressed. And again, fair play to Chelsea. They executed their game plan, but they weren't this excellent, unbeatable team. We just looked dreadful.
I think it'd be very fair to say. Thank you, Joseph. But to end then on the action within 90 minutes, 94th minute, Vicario made a 1-on-1 save with João Pedro. Philip, now the dust has settled, how do you briefly look back on Saturday night? It's a frustration maybe that we don't lay a glove on them, and that even towards the end, Chelsea are pushing for a second goal. Whereas surely we should be pushing for an equaliser, but no, instead, we get a free kick, and Vicario is going to Jed Spence, then it goes back to Vicario, for example, just using an example here. Then it goes straight back to Robert Sanchez. Opportunities like that are where we could lay a glove on Chelsea, right? We don't. But how do you feel overall now?
I just think it brings home again the true reality of where we are, as a squad, as a club, in terms of the quality that we have. And I think we're a bit of a mess, to be honest, because we're in a bit of a silly situation now. Frank can't, create, wine out of water at the moment, right? Despite him being a manager who, has obviously changed things, or is able to change things in game, set up differently for different kinds of, teams that he comes up against, like he has done at Brentford. He's clearly not able to do that at the moment with us, and he can't get our attacking moves kick-started. But as Joseph said again there, we're clearly losing we're missing the quality up front. And the fact is, we're missing 80 or 85 goal contributions, so assists and goals from last season. We're missing that. 4 players who last season basically contributed 85 goals and assists to us. They haven't played a single minute this season practically. Solanke, Kulu, Madders, and Son on the left. When we got rid of Son, I didn't think it would be as bad as it has been, to be honest. We
didn't replace him. We literally didn't replace him.
We didn't. We tried to, by all accounts. We tried to get Savinho in, but we didn't get that player in the end, apart from Xavi in the end. And it's showing now, because we just have a complete lack of quality on the left-hand side. And, he's gone, and we don't have any players, apart from Kudus, probably, who teams are genuinely scared of. And in the Premier League, you need to have weapons. And most teams, even the mid-table teams, even some of the ones in the lower half, they've still got dangerous players, right? where they know that if they leave them, on the break or they leave them in space, they're going to cause you problems. And we do not have that outside of Kudus. We don't have a single player, honestly, who will create fear into the opponents. And, we had that last season, though. We had that last season. When Solanke played a lot of games last season, he gave us balance anyways. Son gave us automatic balance, being on the left, being left-footed, being able to adapt to go up front or over to the left, whatever, and just with, and Madders and Kulu anyways. I know they were injured for parts of last season, but they still played, I think, between them, over 60 games or something for us? So they were with us for the majority of the season. And one of those alone, I believe if we had Madders or Kulu, especially Madders, but if we had Madders or Kulu next to Palhinha, because he's our best midfielder at the moment, then that team would be transformed immediately anyways in midfield. But the fact remains, we don't have a striker and we don't have a left-sided player. And we don't have a left-back either at the moment, because Udogie, who is important for us for the balance as well, regardless of whether he's going down to the byline or not, he gives us automatic balance. Spence gives us nothing. He gives us no balance on the left. He's pretty solid one-on-one, but you can see he doesn't like getting the ball into him, played into him when he's got his back to another player. So we've got a lot of challenges, which I know we had the injury situations last season, which was terrible, but we've lost right now all those goals and contributions. And I think Frank has the challenge at the moment to manage, or to obviously to build his identity, to build those attacking structures, but without the tools really to make it happen. And that's why you're seeing, people also like Xavi struggling, because as Luke said, before, Xavi is the kind of player who needs to probably come into a functioning team. I don't think it needs to be a team that hogs possession the whole time, but he needs to come into a team which is working, which is effective. And we are absolutely not effective. The only thing we can do at the moment is defend effectively away from home, because we're the team that's kind of expected to sit back anyways. And we've managed to score enough goals from set pieces and free kicks, which is great. And that's kudos to Frank and his coaching staff, because we didn't do that at all before. So there's a lot of positives, but right now Frank is trying to, as I said, turn water into wine, ideally champagne in the future. But like we're way off. We're way off it at the moment, And my biggest concern is that with the run of games that we have, is that we end up losing, to United. We end up losing to PSG. We're then playing. We've got who else are we playing? We've got a really difficult game. Arsenal, obviously. We probably lose that at the Emirates anyways. And then we play the likes of Brentford at home, and that's a difficult game. Every single game is difficult now, and my concern is we lose too many games. Obviously, the fan base gets even more, hyped up in a negative way, as it does anyways. We continue to not pick up any points at home. And we end, because the league is so tight, if we drop down to 12th, 13th, 14th quickly, Frank's going to be under automatic pressure, and he should not be fired. We can't even talk about Frank leaving. He's the right man for us. But he has the challenge at the moment of getting enough points, I think, and getting enough, performances up to a certain extent where he can manage everything. He's got a massive, massive job. These next 2 months, or let's say until January, is like, wow, this is massive. This is absolutely massive.
Thank you very much, Philip. No, you're absolutely right. I mean, he's got a job and a half, hasn't he, on his hands. But Joseph, on a lighter note, because we've got still stuff I want to get into about Chelsea, things that went wrong and disappointments. Some would say, look, right now, we're just a couple of points off second place. Someone's already alluded to that in the chat. Find ourselves 5th in the table. Obviously finished 17th last year. And unfortunately, losing to Chelsea is a bit of a regular thing. It shouldn't be, but it is at the moment. So some would look at that and go, our fans looking at this? I don't want to use the word necessarily overreacting, but are they maybe, let's use it, overreacting ever so slightly after this game? Would you even entertain that thought?
Slightly, yeah. I mean, I think what you see on social media is always the most exaggerated feeling in the world. I don't think that is the general Tottenham fan. I think people are patient. And again, you're right. Results-wise, it's going okay. I don't think performance-wise we have been great. There's only been a couple of games where I can say that I was actually, quite impressed with how we've played. Maybe Everton, Manchester City away. I think a lot of the games have been quite unconvincing. Bodo Glimt away, I thought we performed really poorly. Obviously, Wolves at home, we've really performed poor. Aston Villa at home. So I think for performance-wise, I think people can raise some questions. I think that's completely fair. And I think it is a real worry in terms of you look at who we've got coming up, and these are some much better, stronger teams. I wouldn't say we've played loads of top games, but we're coming into a kind of run of games where we're going to be playing against some top teams who have got it figured out. Manchester United are starting to get things going, and I wouldn't be surprised if they gave us a really tough game on the weekend. Then obviously an international break, and we come back and we've got PSG and Arsenal and two of the best teams in Europe, just like that. And Arsenal also being a derby, it hurts me to say, but Arsenal look really, really good at the moment. They just look so solid. And for a team that's so good defensively, and for us to be one of the teams that can't create anything, it doesn't bode well. So yeah, it's tough. I think, as much as I understand, again, maybe people are overreacting, and maybe we just need to be a bit more patient with Frank to kind of start getting his ideas into the players, start getting the attack kind of running. It is good to see us kind of staying in games and being more defensively solid. But we do need to see some adaptation, some progress from the attack, because there isn't enough of it. So I don't know. I see both sides. I understand the overreaction. I think we need to be, patient and just see how things go. But there is definite questions to be asked, because there has been a lot of performances where you could say, we didn't really deserve that. We haven't played very well. We're just kind of getting over the line. And again, because of the games we've got coming up, I wouldn't be surprised to see us kind of slipping a little bit further down the league. Some big games against some tough teams.
Thank you, Joseph. Can I stick with you? One last question for you for now. What one word would you use to describe that performance by Tottenham against Chelsea?
I can't swear.
Unfortunately not. But I get the idea.
Yeah, let's just leave it. Disgraceful. It was genuinely one of the worst performances I've ever seen as a Tottenham fan. I genuinely mean that. I think I saw a statistic. It was the least XG. I think it was 0.05 that we've seen since 2013. And I've never seen a worse performance. And again, in such a big game at home against Chelsea, it's one of our biggest games of the season. Let's be honest, that there is a rivalry between us and Chelsea. We do care about beating them. We want to win that. I can't believe how awful it was. So yeah, I'll leave it at disgraceful. I know that was more than one word, but it's hard for me just to give one word.
That's why I ask, because it's incredibly difficult. And when I plan these things, I always think, right, what questions are difficult and what questions do I not like to answer in a way? And that is definitely one of them, one word answers. So thank you very much. We'll get into, like you said, alluded to, Josie, you're right. I do have quotes from Frank coming in just a little bit, but I want to talk about the incident at the end where Van der Ven and Spence blanked Frank. I mean, you see these type of things, don't you, quite often in social media in terms of, oh, this has happened. Have they fallen out with the manager? Has there been a bust up in the dressing room? So when I heard about this, thought, oh, here we go again. But when you look at it and you look at it even further now, this is quite different. So if people haven't seen it, there's an incident at the end where both of them walk past Thomas Frank. He's clearly wanting to tell them something, engage in something, which Frank later says it's about asking them to go over to the fans. And they both completely do not even acknowledge and walk past. With Spence, raise his arms in the air as well, going a little bit further. Luke, can I start with you? What do you make of this? Of course, a lot has happened since it's come out in terms of Frank said they both now apologise. Frank doesn't see it as too big of an issue. Where do you stand on it? Is it something that you want to see or you want to eradicate?
Well, Joseph already mentioned it earlier about the free kick. And that's where I think Spence's originated from. Spence was the one that gave the ball back to Vicario, and then he went absolutely berserk when the free kick went short. So I think that's just continued on because that was like the last few seconds of the game. The goalkeeper then kicks it into their hands. The game's over, and it's literally him walking straight off the pitch. So I think that's where it originates from. Do I think it's any long-standing issue or problem? No, not really. I think Frank is a really intellectual guy. I think he's very good personality-wise. I think he probably gets along with quite a lot of the squad. Van der Ven has been put into that sort of vice captaincy role now as well. He's been captain on occasions. He's a top goal scorer, so he's playing frequently. He's got the confidence. I don't think it's anything like that. I think, could it be down to a tactical point of view, tactical element where they're not happy? I'm not sure. I think it's one of those where they're just so annoyed at the game. It's in a way it's positive in terms of you can see that they understand the sort of rivalry and that it's not good enough. Is there more to it? We'll never really know, will we? I'm sure if either one of them were sold in January, then we know that this is the start of something. But I just think it's just one of those things. It don't look great, but people will make mistakes in the heat of the moment. Football does do things to you that gives me certain emotions that I don't have in everyday life. So is it just one of those? I would hope so. And I'm glad they're frustrated. I'm glad they're annoyed because it was a terrible, terrible performance. And it pretty much is everything we didn't expect. When you go into a London derby, you expect there to just be a real drive and a real determination to kind of do something. And when you create literally nothing as a team, it's not good enough. And I don't think the overreaction to like Frank being sacked is crazy. But then we also need to remember that there are certain fans that he wasn't their one that they wanted anyway. So they're always going to be on that fence straight away, aren't they? And yes, we are sitting 2 points off second or whatever it is, but also 2 points off 12th. So it's one of them games where you can spin whatever narrative perfectly fits you and what your argument is before we find out what the actual solution is. I think that we had this under Nuno when we won, I think it was 3 or 4 games on the trot. And everyone was going, wow, Nuno's defensively solid, like Spurs look solid. And all Spurs fans were going, no, we have been terrible. And eventually the points will stop. And if the performances continue, we're going to be really, really struggling. And I agree with Joseph. I think that the performances, I've not watched many performances and gone, we look like an absolute brilliant team who are going to score goals. And we've looked solid defensively and we've nicked it. And we've looked great in that aspect, but I don't think we've had like a real dominant performance really where we can look at how many games we're in now into the season. So performances have to improve. Points, we probably are better off than we deserve to be at this stage, which is absolutely fine. Again, you get to the end of the season and you go, wow, that sticky patch at the front at the first quarter, we really struggled. New manager, few new players, injuries, and we managed to get over the line. That's like what they call title sort of contention is sort of form that you need to show. But things need to change. We need to be creating more and guys have mentioned it a little bit as well about his spells at Brentford. He never played against low block teams where he had to dominate games and go and open chances. He's never needed to do that. And actually, I had someone come on my channel who was a Brentford fan, and I was like, "What can we learn to expect?" And he was like, "He struggles to break down low blocks." I was like, "But he's going to play against them a lot against Spurs because, with all due respect to Brentford, nobody goes to Brentford going, if we're not at 100%, we're going to lose." A lot of the teams love coming to Spurs because it's one of them. It's like a sleeping giant. If you beat them, it's a big thing about beating Spurs, but actually the team doesn't reflect that. It's not like you're going and beating Arsenal or a Chelsea, and we've been like that for years. So it's a big name, but actually the players don't live up to that sort of thing. So I was never set on Frank. I think Frank's a great guy. He's brilliant. I love him. Like, I think he should be a Premier League boss. I just wasn't sure that Spurs should be taking that sort of gamble because we've got no proof that he can go and dominate teams and dominate like game after game because he's never done that. Mbeumo and Wissa obviously were turned out to be superb, but he was at a club that was so well run. I mean, look at them now. They appointed their set piece coach and everyone went, they're getting relegated. No, they're not, because they're a well-run club that know what they're doing. They know who they need to bring in, and they just keep churning it out. There's like manager goes, players go, and they just keep doing it. It's a different kettle of fish at Spurs. We're just a different club. Like everyone told me last year that the only reason we had so many injuries is because of Ange. Well, we've got 11 now, so whose fault is it now? This is what we've done for the last 20 years that I've supported Spurs. We go and beat City away, and then go and lose to Burnley at home. This is just the sort of club that we have been for years. So I love him. I think he's a great man. I think he's a great person. He's someone you want to represent your club, but he needs to make some adjustments and he needs to make them fairly quickly, because we are struggling. And also, and I agree with what the guys were saying about how many goals we've lost, but a lot of them goals were fans didn't want them players. They didn't want Son. They wanted Son gone. They wanted this player gone. And Kudos is a level above everything we had this year and everything we had last year. So we need to be able to create more with these sorts of players. Otherwise it's going to be a real long season. But I always said that the left wing, not signing a left winger, was going to be quite difficult for Spurs unless everybody was at 100% and fully fit. And obviously that's not the case because it's Tottenham Hotspur.
Thank you, Luke. You make some really good points there. I think the general rule of thumb, what you're kind of saying here, is like be patient with Frank, but at the same time, he needs to change course on some things. Definitely. Thank you very much for that, Luke. I'm very at time, so we reviewed Chelsea for another 5 or 10 minutes. So, Philip, can I ask you briefly, coming back to this whole situation with Frank being blanked by Van der Ven and Spence? I mean, the question kind of here is, should they be clapping the fans? Because that's what Frank's clearly asking them to do. And we get that it looks like anyway, and it sounds like frustration, completely fine. It's a lot better, isn't it, seeing that than players, all smiling, cuddling and kissing, which they often do after games. So there's two sides to this, Philip. Where are you? Because I look at it and go, I don't want them, cuddling and smiling and swapping shirts after the game. Nothing would annoy me more. But at the same time, I think they should be applauding the fans, especially after a performance like that.
Yeah, it's a difficult one. I mean, you don't want them smiling after the game. But I don't think it's like that really. Here in Germany in the Bundesliga, if the players dropped a stinker like that, the whole team, including the coaching staff, would be forced to go over to the standing fans in front of the wall where they normally, celebrate wins by doing the olays and everything, and they apologize to the fans, right? And they get booed, but they apologize to them, and the fans respect it. And you're not going to get that happening in the Premier League quite like that, but maybe I'm a bit old school about it, but seeing something like what they did, literally just to walk past Frank, and they basically blanked him, and Spence was, making gestures and stuff as well. And, for me, that's unacceptable behavior. I think that's a lack of respect personally. I can understand, look, both of those players, they were the ones who were mainly at fault for the goal, right? As well. They didn't play well in the game, right? So, they're obviously completely upset probably with themselves. They know that they've dropped the stinker. I can understand it. I can understand why they would do that. But I still think it's unacceptable behavior, really, to do it like that. And I can understand why they might not want to go in front of the fans or go around the stadium. But I would also say that sometimes, when the players go around the stadium, they give some limp like claps and stuff, clapping the fans. It's also not very passionate, and it's a difficult one to answer. It really is a difficult one to answer. But I think as a fan, I would prefer that the players come around the pitch, and you know what? You can clap them, you can boo them. It's your right as a fan to do that, right? Everyone's paying a lot of money, to get to the stadium, and some fans are paying thousands, right, to get to those games. So I think they've got to put themselves in front of the fan base. Personally, you have to do it, right? You get paid millions every year. It's not that bad to go out in front of your own fans where you've dropped a stinker and kind of say thanks for your support and I'm sorry. Personally, if it was me, and it kind of goes against, makes the team weaker probably, right? Because Mickey, he needs to start tomorrow, I guess, and probably Spence does as well, right? Unless if he actually plays Udogie. But personally, I know that supposedly they apologized today. They went and found Frank of their own accord, I think is what Frank said. So fair play for them doing that. If that's really what happened, maybe I'm too hardcore around it, but I'd be tempted. I'd be almost saying you're sitting a game out, lads. You're sitting a game out. One game. Sorry.
That's the thing, Philip, and not being funny, if Van der Ven stepped in as a captain, this is a podcast, I've got asked a difficult question. Some would say, do you stop him becoming captain again if you do that? Because, you should be able to appreciate fans, and should be able to go, respect your manager and respect fans.
Yeah.
And that's not captain-like behaviour or vice-captain-like behaviour.
I mean, I know it's football. Football's different from business and from companies and everything else. But, if you're the boss and you're the coach and your employees are kind of doing something like that, that's unacceptable. You don't do that.
If you blank your boss and you just walk out of the boardroom, and sod you kind of attitude, then you're not going to get very far, are you?
In front of everyone else, in front of the press, and in front of the fans, it's not.
And doing all of that, all of this, it's not going to
work. Especially Mickey, to be honest. I mean, as I said, captain and vice captain in the squad anyway, right? He's kind of raised him to that level. Again, I understand anger of the player and everything else, and that they just want to maybe get to the dressing room or something. But sorry, you're getting paid a lot of money, and you got to respect the people that are kind of running the game, setting the teams up, and also the fans. So for me, it's a no-go, and I think it's a shame. But these things happen, and I'm pretty sure that it's not a big problem in the squad. I think it's an isolated incident, right? I think it's literally caused by just frustration and probably disappointment to play that poorly, right, as well at the end of the day, because I don't think anyone expected us to literally turn up and drop such an embarrassing performance, such a limp, performance where you can't even put a glove on them. I mean, seriously, so I can understand why they're very disappointed, but you've got to do better than that. You've got to do better than that.
100%.
I would let them sit a game out, to be honest, if it was me. The only thing I would say is that Frank also, though, he's especially, I mean, Ange was as well, really, right? At least Ange always said he did, but Frank's very clear about behaving in the right way, in the squad, and doing things in the right way, communicating in the right way. So it would be interesting to be a fly on the wall, to actually see what's kind of been said there behind the scenes. But I would imagine,
I don't think we've got the fit first team players, have we, to be able to say to fan defenders, Spence, sit this one out. We'll be going to
I think Spence might be injured, so he might not even play or something like that. So
yeah, we found out today that we've got more players injured. Kudus, Spence, and of course Bergvall with that missing 2 games.
I mean, Mickey probably should play tomorrow anyways, right? But I would imagine that they'll come out with an interview, or they'll say some words around it and say they kind of are sorry for, they'll apologize in their own way, right? Not a groveling apology, but they'll say something about it, I would imagine. And Mickey will play. And if Spence is injured, then hopefully he's back soon, because we do need him in the squad. But at least it means that Udogie can start, because I think that is critically needed on the left. Critically needed.
I agree with you. You need someone who can cross the ball in from that side. Thank you, Philip, for that. I'll just read out a quick Thomas Frank quote, then I have one more question, which I'm going to put to you, Joseph, before we go on to Copenhagen to wrap up. Thomas Frank was asked on how, the Tottenham team in general that's losing and did lose against Chelsea could not have a shot at all in the second half, and how that can happen in a game of such magnitude and importance to Spurs fans, and does he see the team evolving attacking-wise? Frank said it's a good question. There's probably not one answer to that. One thing for sure, we need to do that better. I think the thing is that all the games are a little bit different. I think there were signs of it against Everton away, against Villa at home, against Newcastle away. Interestingly, he said Newcastle away. Today, there's not too much signs of it. That's Frank talking about attackingly, which was interesting. So, Joseph, can I get your thoughts on Frank saying there that, he thought that there were signs attackingly anyway, reference the likes of Newcastle, but also drift into our home form? How much of that is an issue at the moment? It's one of those you kind of go, yeah, okay, our home record's not perfect, but is it now becoming quite a big issue?
Oh, yeah, massively. I mean, I think, again, don't quote me on it, but I think it was 3 wins at home in a year or something like that. It's something crazy like that. It is awful the way that we can't seem to win games at home. I mean, I remember at White Hart Lane, that final season we made it a fortress. We didn't lose at home. And now you look at us in the stadium and, we seem to lose games every single week there. So, yeah, it is definitely something that needs to be addressed. I understand, obviously, again, the toxic atmosphere at the Tottenham Stadium it's been really poor, the atmosphere at Tottenham this year. The fans never seem to really get really up for it. Obviously, part of the reason is going to be because of the football. And like Philip said, I think it was Philip or Luke said it's a bit of a catch-22 because you need the players to play well for the fans to get up for it, but you need the fans to get up for it for maybe the player to get that extra energy. So it's a really tough one. But again, another quote from Frank, he was saying he's never had a team create less in a game ever in his whole career, that's damning. And that's kind of a comment on the players. It's not going to be a comment on him. He's kind of calling out the players a little bit there, kind of saying like, you need to buck up your ideas because this isn't good enough. You're not creating anything. That's a problem. And I'm sure he will internally go, okay, what can I do to improve this? Because he needs to start getting something out of them. He needs to get some kind of, some shapes going in terms of triangles, some movement off the ball, because there's none of it. But it's definitely a personnel issue as well. There needs to be some big changes, and maybe we'll see some of that in January, most likely in the summer. But I mean, you for me personally, obviously not everyone would agree. Richarlison has to go. I'd be happy to see the back of Brendan Johnson. I don't see what he brings personally to the squad. I think Tell and Odebear, they're good, and I want to see them progress, but they're not ready yet. And I don't even know. I think the striker position is one that we could easily go and sign a player in. I mean, I like Solanke. There was stuff he did last season, but we don't know how he's gonna play really.
Well, he could suit the Frank system more, couldn't he? With more balls going into the box. That's where he used to thrive at Bournemouth.
Yeah, he could do. But again, we have to wait and see. And the same with Colin Warney. We need to give him some time, but we could easily go get a new striker. We need a left winger. And again, we are missing key creative players like Maddison, like Kulusevski, and I understand that, but again, it's just you've got to get more out of these players. They're all international footballers. They're getting paid millions upon millions to play football, and they should be better than how they have been this season. So, yeah, definitely things need to change. Definitely need to see some more creative output from our players. But yeah, we got a big game tomorrow against Copenhagen, and it's a must win. As much as I agree with Philip, I think on that whole Van der Ven and Spence thing, they should both be dropped for a game. I don't actually know you can drop Van der Ven because we actually have to win tomorrow. We have to. It's been okay in the Champions League so far, a couple of draws and one win, but I think we need to win tomorrow because PSG away is probably going to be a loss. And if you want to try and get in that top 8 or just qualify into the next round, we need to be winning these games at home.
Thank you, Joseph. It leads me on nicely to Copenhagen because I was going to ask about Vicario, but I think we can all agree that, Vicario is probably the only one that he could hold, his head high after that game. But let's move into Copenhagen. Philip, I'll come to you. What are your brief thoughts going into the game? Is it one that Tottenham have to win?
Yeah, I think we have to win tomorrow for more ways, for more reasons than one, right? I mean, number one, we need to actually give our home fans, another win. I mean, I went to the first home game of the season, right, to Burnley. That's the only game I've been to this season so far, and I certainly didn't expect to be sitting here, how many months later, and us not having won since then. So I was quite lucky, really, coming all the way over from Germany. To be honest, I certainly picked the right one at least. But we need 3 points tomorrow. We need a win. We need it for the Champions League, I think, because we've got PSG next, and we've got obviously Frankfurt then coming up, haven't we, in January? I can't remember who else we've got without checking, but we need the points, I think, tomorrow. We need three points. And look, again, let's be honest. I mean, I'm sure FC Copenhagen aren't a bad team. They probably won the league there, I assume. They're a well-oiled team, right? They're probably the best team in their league, right? So they play good football. It's not going to be easy as always, but we've got to be beating these teams somehow, at home. It has to get to the point where we pull out a result from somewhere, and coming from such a poor game as well, we have to do it. It's critical. The one thing that I don't really understand about the situation at the moment. And that includes the performance against Chelsea, as admittedly, and we've talked about it, we've got a lack of creativity, we've got a lack of quality in the attacking positions, we've got the injuries on top of that. We don't have, Udogie starting all the games. I still kind of just question a bit and have to think, like, surely Frank and his team, and it's not just all about Frank, by the way. We've got Cochrane in there, who's a great coach, one of the most highly rated coaches in the country, right? They know they can play attacking football. They're not both like defensive, Mourinho kind of coaches, right? Who only want to play football like that. They want to try and, create opportunities, and we're just not doing it at all. And I just kind of question a bit, well, I still think we have to be doing a bit more somehow with what we've got. Like if you've still got players like Kudus, Muani, even if you play Johnson up front, like and whoever you play on the left, if you've still got Palina and whoever it might be, let's say Sarr next to him, and then Xavi maybe coming in, even if he gets 45 minutes with a solid defense, you've got to be able to create more than 0.05 XG.
Maybe, Philip, Copenhagen's a good chance to show what we're capable of or what we can do in an attacking sense.
Well,
I mean, no disrespect to them, but it could be the right game.
Well, no, but it has to be, I think. I think it's got to the point already where we have to pull out a performance tomorrow. And I know I went on a bit of a rant earlier on, which maybe came across a bit more negative than I intended, right? But that's just frustration, because I fully believe that Frank is the right guy for us, right? And we've been talking about it the last 3 months.
Agree.
About the things that he's already improved, the kind of the cards that he's been dealt as well, up to a certain extent, but also the pressure to make us stop, leaking stupid goals, just from teams just being able to carve us open on a will almost in a lot of games last season. He's kind of solved all of those topics. I know we still give away stupid goals sometimes. The other thing is we still play with a high line quite often. It's not like Frank just sits, puts the team sitting on the edge of the box the whole time. We do play quite high on occasion as well, but there's just a complete lack of creativity. And I think, again, the problem is, and this is why I'm frustrated, is if he cannot get little wins out of the team, create those, he's done it with the defense. At some point, he needs to just start bringing small shoots through, consistently on attacking moves, because if he doesn't, and we don't score enough goals, we don't lay enough, get enough punches on the opposition, then he's gonna, we're gonna pay for it with the results, and that's where I just worry that it could get very negative very quickly, right? Knowing how our fan base is, knowing how the online world is, X, Twitter, whatever, right? It's ridiculous, but it can escalate, and that's my concern. And that's why tomorrow we have to somehow, Frank and his team, I know they've only had a couple of days after such an awful performance, but they need to pull it out. Like, I don't know what they were doing in training today, and I'm not sure what the deal is tomorrow with training and stuff, how many hours or how they deal with it. So they won't have had much time, but they have to come up with some kind of tweak or plan, and the last thing I'll just say on Frank quickly is, I think that one thing that Frank isn't doing particularly well, maybe he's being too reactive to the opposition, in terms of he's actually, so like he played Bergvall out on the left, obviously, probably in that game against Chelsea. And I think he did it because he thought that he could nullify, some kind of threat from Chelsea. Like, he seems to set up in certain ways because he is trying to nullify the opposition. And I'm not sure that right now, based on where we are as a team, in terms of how we want to play football, that's maybe the right thing to do. I think it'd almost be better, almost follow. I'm not saying he should follow Ange Ball, right? Because that's not going to help. But I think he kind of needs to consistently try and follow, from an attacking perspective, right, a very clear plan to try and get things moving. Otherwise it could go to desperation levels, right? Where he just starts, kind of like trying new things every game, right? Putting new players into different positions. So it's highly critical tomorrow that we see an improved performance attacking wise, but I would say as well, like actually an improved performance passion wise and energy wise from the players. Somehow we have to pull it out. Otherwise ahead of the next couple of games that we're playing, in fact, the next 3 games in the league and in Champions League, it could get a bit messy,
And we don't want that. But Philip, can I get your score prediction lastly?
Well, I think we're gonna turn up and surprise a lot of people maybe, but I'm gonna go with a 2-0 actually tomorrow. I think we're gonna keep a clean sheet. And I think we'll score a couple of goals. I'm going to go with a 2-0. And I think that the players and everyone realize how important it is, right? That somehow they dig it out.
Very, very important. Thank you, Philip, for that. Luke, can I get your quick thoughts and score prediction, please, for Copenhagen?
Yeah, I mean, I do agree with quite a lot that's just been said, really. I think this is the one game we need to really start. If we don't create chances and don't look good in an attacking sense tomorrow, then I think the fans will really, really start getting on some of the players' backs for sure. It'd be interesting to see with the lineup who he goes with. I actually don't think Van der Ven or Spence need to play. I know we've had some injuries, but Romero should be able to get, considering he didn't start on the weekend, he should be able to get through 90 minutes against a Copenhagen side at home in my eyes. So I think Danzo can play. I think Udogie needs to come in and get a bit of fitness. So I don't think either of them need to start, but obviously it does depend on the fitness. And also I'm still wary about Van der Ven playing too many games. Be interesting to see if Bentancur and Palhinha both start again together in a midfield. But I think we're going to win 2-0. I'm hoping that Odobert plays, and hopefully some of the players can find a little bit of rhythm and kind of go on a bit of a run. Maybe Moani can nab a goal. We'll see. But yeah, 2-0, good solid defensive display, and hopefully we can create a few bits going forward as well.
Okay, thank you. I'd never give my score prediction, but I feel like I will to add to the positivity. I'm going to be 3-1 Tottenham. I don't think we'd quite keep a clean sheet because you know what we're like. We have to make things a little bit difficult, but I still think we get the job done, hopefully. Thank you. And Joseph, can I get your thoughts and score prediction? Are you going to go with the win as well?
I'm not sure, to be honest. I think I will but it's a tough one because Copenhagen haven't been bad in the Champions League so far. I think they got a draw against Bayer Leverkusen, which was a pretty decent draw. I know Bayer Leverkusen haven't been the best, but still, it's a good point for them. And then they lost 4-2 to Dortmund at home, which shows maybe they're not the best defensively. I think we'll concede. But yeah, I mean, I think we can get a win. I'd love to see Luca Williams-Barnett start on the left. If he doesn't trust anyone on the left, let's put the youngster out and see what he can do. But yeah, I'm hoping for a win. We need a win. I echo what the other boys said. We need to win tomorrow. It's a must win, and I think everyone wants to see a good performance. So yeah, I'll go over 2-1. Again, expectations to what I want is definitely feeling a bit different. So my head's saying one thing, my heart's wanting another. But yeah, let's go with my heart. So yeah, we'll go 2-1 win, and hopefully we'll be feeling a bit more positive when it comes to Thursday's podcast.
Let's hope so. Yeah, exactly. Fingers crossed, because you're back on, aren't you, Thursday? Hopefully in some good circumstances. The win against Copenhagen and looking positively, hopefully against United. But 2 home games this week. I mean, you can look at that either way. I looked at it and thought, oh, for God's sake. But you can also look at it and go, time to end the awful home record. So not good. We need to put it right. We'll see. Exactly. We'll leave that for Thursday. But that wraps up nicely for this episode. So thank you to everyone who has listened. Let's go through the panel and see if you can find them on the socials. Philip, thanks as always for coming on. Where can people find you? Talk to people a bit about what you do.
Yeah, thanks again, Harry. Harry, it's great to be on. I'm mainly on X at Frankfurt Spurs. I tweet mainly about Spurs and the Bundesliga sometimes as well. A bit about Eintracht Frankfurt, which is kind of like my second team here in Germany. I'm going to be doing more on that moving forward. But yeah, I'm also trying to grow the Spurs or South Germany Spurs official supporters club here. in Germany as well. So we've gone over 100 members now officially. And we're forecasting to probably get up to about 150 kind of Q1 next year. We're growing fast. So bearing in mind that we're playing Frankfurt here in January, if anyone out there who's watching this wants to come over for that game to Germany and needs any tips or advice about what to do when you're here or anything else whatsoever, just shout me up, hit me up. Happy to help.
Great stuff. Thank you so much, Philip. Keep up that great work. Talking of great work, Luke, thank you very much for coming on. Talk to people a bit about what you do and where people can find you, but also your amazing podcast in Spotlight on Spurs.
Cheers, mate. Yeah, it's been very, very quiet last six weeks or so. I've had quite a lot going on in my personal life, but we're back today. First podcast in a while, and we'll go live on Thursday as well. I've left it typically late as Spurs always do. Kind of expected the absence to be a short time, and it's ended up being a hell of a long time. But that's typical Spurs for you. So, but yeah, Spotlight on Spurs on YouTube. We're close, very, very close to 1.5k now. So appreciate all the support. Really, really appreciate everyone. X, Instagram, everything. Spotlight on Spurs. As you can imagine, just always talking about Spurs because there's always something crazy going on at our crazy club. So there's always a discussion point. We get an international break and the chairman leaves after 25 years. And there's always something chaotic going on, even when you get a steady Eddie gaffer in like Thomas Frank. So, yeah, it'd be great to see you guys over at Spotlight on Spurs. And obviously, really, really appreciate you letting me come back on again, Harry. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Anytime. Thank you very much, Luke. And Joseph, lastly, thanks as always for coming on. We will see you Thursday, but where can people follow you?
Yeah, on X, Joseph THFC. Yeah, mainly tweeting about Spurs, getting a bit more into my Serie A football. My partner's a Juventus fan, so I've kind of been an adopted Juventus fan along with obviously adopting her to Tottenham. But yeah, getting more into Juventus and really becoming quite a big fan of them, which is a nice difference. And also American sports, I'm a massive American sports fan. So if you're interested in any of that, getting interested in anything, or just want to hear me rant about Tottenham, please go follow me. And yeah, looking forward to more podcasts. Hopefully back on Thursday with a positive outcome, and looking forward to that United game. But yeah, we'll see about that. Don't want to hold my breath.
No, don't rely on Spurs, but fingers crossed. Thank you to all of you. It's been a very good one. If you're listening via audio, please drop us a follow and a 5-star review. Shout out to all of our partners. If you're listening on YouTube, please subscribe. As I said at the start, thank you for all the amazing support recently. Go follow all these guys across all socials. Thank you to everyone who's watched, who's commented, who's asked a question, and thanks to my fantastic panel for tonight. And a massive lastly,